John, the big news, the big news this week is the ESPN broker deal for UFC broadcast rights that are currently owned by Fox. Let's go into this. You've been at ESPN. You've worked there for years. ESPN personnel are now working for the UFC, including yourself, that have been there before. Is this, as I feel, a marriage made in heaven?
Well, I think in a lot of respects it is, and it runs pretty deep for me. You know, I hosted the first episode of MMA Live on ESPN.com in April of 2008. We took that show to ESPN2 2 years later in May of 2010. And here, almost 10 years to the day of that first episode of MMA Live, we now get news that ESPN is going to televise UFC fight nights. And obviously you can read the details and the depth of this deal anywhere you want, but everything that you saw on Fox is going to ESPN. And I guess, you know, my emotions overall, Buff, are through the roof, elated excitement. But as we digest devoted all of this, you know, I have some very dear friends at Fox Sports, and their futures maybe are a little bit uncertain. There are a lot of people over there that have devoted 7 years of their lives to the UFC and have developed the passion that you and I have for this sport. And so there's a little bit of that emotion from me today. But yeah, I mean, if I could run through my wall and it wouldn't cost me money to fix it, I'd run through it right now. I mean, this was a goal of ours when we first started launching MMA Live and, you know, hoping that ESPN would get on board. And obviously it didn't happen during the John Skipper era, but it is happening now. And I think it's very exciting. And forgetting about you and me, Buff, and anybody else individually, for the UFC, and in theory, the athletes, this is just enormous.
I think it is enormous. I think it's enormous for all of us in the fantasy. I'm especially elated for the warriors, the female and male warriors that will enter that octagon in the future. It secures their income. I'm happy to see that it's securing a lot of things for the people and the hires that be at UFC, because that's their given right for doing what they do and buying this company and bringing it on to the greatness that they're continuing to do. Now, my question, John, you mentioned employees over there at Fox. So now Karen Bryant, as an example, someone I thoroughly enjoy watching, and she does a great job. Is she a Fox employee that could possibly not wind up going to ESPN? Is that how that
I don't
works?
know, and I wouldn't even get into individuals on the talent side. I'm talking about exclusively behind-the-scenes people, right? All the full-time Fox Sports employees that have devoted the entirety of their professional lives to the UFC. And a lot of these people obviously predated the UFC Fox deal, so they had other jobs in that building before the UFC deal was consummated. But for the talent, you know, I got to think that you'll see a lot of the same faces. I got a few months left on my contract. There are a lot of different balls in the air right now, but I don't know. I'm more thinking about the people behind the scenes that never get enough credit and what their future might be if indeed all of these reports are true and they will no longer be doing anything UFC related. I mean, I don't know what the depth of Fox Sports coverage would be now when it comes to the UFC. But big picture, man, this is hugely exciting that on ESPN or ESPN2, we're getting UFC fight nights. I mean, there was a time where some of us didn't necessarily give up on that dream, but just thought it was such a pipe dream and unrealistic. And, you know, even Dana, several years ago was just saying, you know, ESPN not covering the sport the right way. Well, they are now, and I'm truly elated. I'm excited. I think the timing's right, and I think it's just going to really help take the sport to the next level, even more so than what the 7 years of the Fox deal did, and they accomplished quite a bit.
Well, I absolutely agree with you because, let's face it, ESPN is a pinnacle network to be at when it comes to being sports programming. No question.
Right.
Fox, also the same thing. But ESPN is a sports network. I mean, we can honestly say, it is a sports network. And if you're there, it's almost like legitimizing your sport. So this is another form of ultimate legitimization by being recognized and having a brokered deal to be on ESPN, which is easily more seen around the world. And on my travels all over the world, as you do, John, ESPN is on everywhere we go, pretty much.
Right.
So you're not going to miss UFC. You're not going to get confused by, as much as I love Fox, some of the issues in the past, Fox Sports 1 and Fox Sports 2. You know, yes, there's ESPN2 and main ESPN, but concentrated focus, always knowing where to go for a show. I'm so excited about this, John. I'll run through that wall with you. How's that? Yeah,
no, I mean, it's hard to see any downside, certainly from the views that we have and the seats that we sit in, right? I mean, this is absolutely enormous and has the potential to really take the UFC into the lives of people that just aren't that familiar with mixed martial arts. And to have this deal come together when Ronda Rousey is no longer in the picture and Conor McGregor hasn't fought in 600 days, I think is another boon for the UFC. I think it proves that when you look at this roster of 500, 600, whatever it is, and you look at the top 100 or so, these athletes deserve a lot of credit. You can say I'm kissing ass, and that's fine. But look at this top 100. Not even the household names necessarily, but just that they have helped elevate this sport, with their fighting and with their training. And I think that has made for places like ESPN to have an appetite for it. So, yeah, man, it's exciting. It's been a crazy day, that's for sure.
Yeah, I guess that pretty much puts it all into perspective. Now we got up and we're going over to Liverpool, England. Very exciting show, the land of the Beatles. I'm going to go in a day early. I'm going to do a little sightseeing. Can't wait to see the fight with Darren Till and Wonder Boy. Lots of good stuff happening there. Neil Magny's on the card. Just a good, solid card, and it's always great to be in the UK. As a matter of fact, Elias Theodorou is actually fighting on Fight Pass prelims. It's funny.
Well, and Buff, I'm a little bit envious that you're making the trek to Liverpool, because I think you almost undersold it a little bit in terms of what type of live event we are expecting. Obviously, we get a lot of quick sellouts in Europe, in England, in Sweden, beyond, but Liverpudlians and this town are just huge fight fans and hugely passionate people about all of their sports, and Darren Till seems to be moving the needle to such an extent that this is a fight that's going to be broadcast on the radio on BBC, and, I know TJ loves that, and I love hearing that because it'll be a radio call and not a TV call, presumably. But this is a big fucking deal, Buff, and hopefully It's Time sort of dovetails with how big I think this event is.
I know it's a big deal. It was sold out in hours. I can't wait to get over there. I'm going to roar It's Time like there's no tomorrow, and the UK people, the fans there in Liverpool, they'll be roaring it back with me, and I'm honored by that. That's my little moment, but overall, great card, great fight, and you put it on radio? That's like a first, isn't it?
Yeah, and again, I'm sure some people who really dig deep into that decision by the BBC can say, yeah, but they're not doing this or whatever. But point being, they haven't done it before, and they're doing it now, and the reason is because of Darren Till. And this fight is awesome. It's always interesting for me to hear Kenny Florian on our show because I trust his opinion to such an extent. And usually I have a pretty good gauge as to which side he's going to end up on the main event. I thought he might go Darren Till, but he went with the veteran Stephen Thompson, who obviously is 10 years Darren Till's senior. I'm just excited to see what Darren Till can do, fighting a guy who has been entrenched in the welterweight top 5 for 4 or 5 years now. And Till is interesting. They had a side-by-side of these two guys signing posters today, Buff, and Darren Till's hands are enormous. And I don't know what kind of tell that is, but I just think this is a guy, everything he throws is hard. He's fighting a truly special striker, a one-of-a-kind type striker in Stephen Thompson. But I'm just excited to see what Darren Till can do. And anyone who thinks it's going to be easy for Stephen Thompson over 25 minutes, I think is kidding themselves.
Well, I'm a big fan of Stephen Thompson. I really enjoy watching Darren Till fight. I'm a fan of his also. You're dealing with two fighters with different styles. Stephen Thompson, the Lyoto Machida similar style, creating the distance, maintaining the distance to do his effective type of striking with his kicks and his punches. Darren Till walking straight in, moving side to side as the striker he is. Those hands are devastating, and as long as they don't touch Stephen, it could be a long 5 rounds. It's going to be very interesting to see how this pans out because of the two distinctly different styles of each fighter. Darren Till being the local favorite hero and the crowd going nuts. Can't wait. Going to be awesome. And, of course, I look forward to being there. Let's step out of this for a second. John, you're a baseball fan. You follow baseball incredibly. I was reading this article on Chris Davis, the one that signed the $161 million mega deal. They're claiming this has spiraled into like Major League Baseball's worst contract bust ever. Is that true?
Historically, I guess it's pretty bad. He strikes out at a pretty good clip. But there have been a lot of bad deals doled out, I mean, I could just start ripping them down when it comes to the Boston Red Sox. The Carl Crawford contract comes to mind. He did next to nothing after getting a whole lot of money from the Red Sox. Of course, at the time, I loved the signing as a fan. But I think that's sort of the way it goes in baseball, and sometimes one injury can really screw up one of these max contracts, right? You give a guy 6 years, $150 million, and all of a sudden you lose a season. And in a game like baseball, right, which is so much about timing and really all the little muscles working in sync and being on together, it can be really tough. But, the Orioles are not in a good place right now, that's for sure. And there's at least 3 really good teams above them. It's certainly 2 that are elite. But how about your boy T.J. DeSantis checking out his Minnesota Twinkies, taking on the L.A. Angels at Anaheim the other day?
Say Minnesota Twinkies? I love that.
Yeah, that's one of their great nicknames. Usually they're only called the Twinkies when they lose 100 ball games, which there have been plenty of Twinkie references over the last few years. But, made the wild card last year. You're talking about bad contracts, Anik. Like, maybe this is sacrilegious for me to say, being from the great state of Minnesota, but we're paying Joe Mauer like $20 million a year, and this dude is not anything like the guy that was winning batting titles or anything like that. Like, he's batting leadoff, and great, good on base percentage. That's great. But like, when you're paying somebody $20 million a year, I want more than opposite field singles.
Yeah, no, I get it. And obviously Mauer had established enough goodwill where sometimes you're going to eat some money on the back end of a contract like that. But yeah, this Chris Davis deal, I guess, $161 million or whatever it is, and not getting too much production. And I think big picture too, you got to be smart when you're chasing the Red Sox and the Yankees and they get into one of these cycles where they both look to be truly elite. You got to figure something out. You can throw money at the problem, but it doesn't always work, and certainly it hasn't worked for Baltimore. And they got a player in Manny Machado, who's one of the best players in the American League, and he's going to come up on free agency pretty soon, if I'm not mistaken, and they're going to probably lose him. So not getting any easier anytime in Baltimore. Maybe they can root for the Washington Nationals, although they have been postseason disappointments in their own right. But they got Las Vegas's Bryce Harper, so they'll always have a fan in me, will the Nats.
I got to tell you, I listened to John Anik just let all that fly off his tongue with the greatest of ease and the greatest of tech knowledge and everything else behind it. John, you're a pro. No wonder. ESPN definitely worked for you.